Welcome to the last video in this series, and this is about programming some cues. On the assignment, you're going to find that you're being requested to make a series of small cues. I'm going to, in this one, show you just the really basic steps of generating one or two cues and then going from one to the next. So we're going to jump back into the offline editor. We're going to reformat a little bit just so some things are easier to see, and we're going to get started. Back in the offline editor, and I'm going to make a couple of visual changes before we do this section just so that you can see things a little more clearly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up here. If you remember from my very first setup video, I laid out these panels. Well, one of the things that I'm going to do in order to make that a little bit more clear is that I'm going to change. I'm actually going to switch to this right here. What this has done is that this has opened up my tracking section. I still have my virtual keyboard, and I still have my cue listing right here, but you'll notice patch was relegated to a separate tab, so I could still look at it. I'm just not going to. So when I go back here into my live section, what I can see now is I can see all of my conventional fixtures, and then I could see those moving lights, and then I could see those LED pars a little more clearly. If you want to see even more, you can actually right click and you could zoom out to get a little bit more space in there because you might want to see more fixtures at a time. Now, I'm not going to go crazy with a lot of this because we're just doing some basics about how to set up a cue. We already know, for instance, that we want to set levels. I'm going to go ahead and do kind of a gimme one for you first. Your very first cue is likely to be all of your house lights on and your stage lights off. In fact, if you look at the assignment, that is one of the cues that I have requested of you. So if you look at your patch sheet that you previously had in your channels, channel 100 is your house lights. So we're going to take 100 and we're going to set them at full. So right there, those are all of our house lights at full. So there are no lights on the stage, but the house lights are on. That's my cue. I'm not going to do anything else. So how do I record that? Very simply, because like I said, the ETC language is so simple and easy, it reads like regular English. I want to do record. There's the record button right there. It is a hard key, obviously. I'm going to hit record, and then it already thinks I want to do Q1 because it's intuitive like that. I hit enter, record Q1, please confirm, enter. I now have a cue number 1. My cue number 1 represents, you'll notice everything here is blue. All of these lights are off except for that which is at full. When I go to record my next cue, because this is a tracking console, it's going to automatically remember all of that data into the next cue. So if I, for instance, wanted to, say, dim the house lights down to black, very easily, I would go channel 100, out. Those lights are now out. Record cue 2. See how it automatically decided I needed it to be a cue? Enter. Please confirm, enter. So now my Q2, everything else has gone out, and that is it. So obviously that was a very basic principle, but just to kind of show you how the board sees it, in order to make sure that we have what we wanted to have happen, we could hit go to Q, right? And then instead of Q0 here, we're actually going to say Q1, and then we would hit enter. We're now watching the board go through the process of bringing that light up, and then this is the equivalent of the go button on the board. We would strike it. It moves from Q1 into Q2. You could see there's the time happening, there's the level going down, and it is done. We're going to add a couple of more cues just to kind of reiterate some of those tracking elements that I was talking about. So, for instance, we're going to click back over here onto our live table. And I'm going to bring up some of these other lights. I'm just going to use 1 through 5 as an example because it's easy to see. So I'm going to go channels 1 through 5. I'm going to put them at 80%. That's kind of the default level of the board. And then I'm going to hit record. and I'm going to hit Q3, and then I'm going to hit enter. Now I have a Q3 that includes these. If I were to make a change, or like let's say I'm going to add a few more fixtures, I'm going to add 11 to 14. I'm going to go 11 through 14 at 20%. I have now added those here. I have two options in order to make this happen. If I want that to be a new cue, meaning I want to hit the go button again, I would hit record, and then I would give it a new cue number 4. If I decided I wanted those to be part of this cue, which is already active, which is Q3, then I would simply hit update, and then I would hit enter. So I've now updated cue number 3 to include these fixtures as well as these. So the last thing that I'm going to talk about with writing cues is just a way to drive home the tracking element of the board. And in order to do that, I'm actually going to do something with these Slim Par Pros here to bring up the level. So I'm going to go back here. I'm already in Q3. I've already updated it. Well, I'm going to update it again. In that cue, I'm going to take my Slim Pars, which I have actually incorrectly selected, because I want 111 through 114, and I'm going to give them some intensity and bring them on to full, but I'm going to change the color there so that it's just amber, and then I'm going to update this cue. No, that is not correct. I am going to update. So that cue now has those lights with the amber on it full. In order to show you what I mean about this being a tracking console, if I were to program a new cue, for instance, in the next cue, perhaps 1 through 5 goes out, and the Slim Pars, they go out as well. I'm going to then record Q4, enter. You'll notice that all of this information where I changed the red, the green, and the blue, that remained at 0. So if I wanted that information to change, I would actually have to program it into the next cue. It doesn't default back to having all of that information. That's particularly important when you get into dealing with pan, tilt, and color scrollers with these moving lights. So I'm going to make a habit of saying that barely covers it, because that's all I'm going to talk about with writing cues. There are so many things. The speed with which one cue comes up, the speed with which the cue before comes down. You can change all of those levels, which, again, if you're looking for more in-depth training, go to the links and view the ETC videos. But that will get you the basic parameters on how to write a cue and how to update one once you have written it. So this concludes this video series. I hope that you learned something and that you have fun with the assignment. Thank you so much.